Welcome. Today I want to talk to you about a new water storage technology called artificial ice reservoirs. Just last winter, farmers in Kyrgyzstan, Chile, and India used this technology for their irrigation water supply. Why? Because they didn't need any support to do this, not in terms of money or energy or even expertise. This technology was invented in Ladakh, a high altitude mountain desert in northern India. It lies in the rain shadow of the Himalayas and receives on average less than 10 centimeters of rain or snow per year. As glaciers decline due to climate change, regional water scarcity is increasing, and so farmers here have resorted to these ice reservoirs as insurance against this uncertainty. In the last 3 winters alone, more than 500 farmers have built around 50 ice stupas, storing around 120 million liters of water in 26 villages of this region. Together with Himalayan Institute of Alternatives, I have been helping these farmers grow these ice structures for the last 6 years. But even now, whenever we build an ice stupa in a new location, we never know what to expect. Will this ice stupa grow big enough to break our old records, or will it not even survive the heat of the next day? I have often wondered whether ice stupas are a good way to achieve winter water storage. Watching the ice stupa freeze in the winter, I wonder how much of the water we are spraying is actually freezing or ending up in a puddle somewhere. Watching the ice stupa melt under the summer sun, I wonder how much of the water we have frozen is evaporating back into the atmosphere. These were the questions I came with when I joined my PhD program at the University of Fribourg. Here, we developed a Python model and a measurement strategy to capture the ice volume dynamics of these ice structures. Using drones, flow meters, and weather stations, we measured two ice stupas built simultaneously in Switzerland and India just last winter. These two locations are drastically different. The Indian location was much higher in altitude compared to the Swiss. The Indian location was also colder by around 2 degrees Celsius than that of the Swiss. The Indian location was also much drier than that of the Swiss, and it also received much higher solar radiation than the Swiss. The fountains used in both the locations were also quite drastically different. The mean discharge rate of the Indian fountain was around 7 times higher than that of the Swiss, but it was switched on for a duration around half than of that of the Swiss. We also defined something called a spray radius of the fountain. To understand this, let's look at the Swiss ice stupa from the top down. Here you see a nice ice perimeter formed due to the fountain discharge, and this is what we mean by the spray radius. So in the Swiss ice stupa, the spray radius was around 7 meters, whereas in the Indian ice stupa, the spray radius was around 10 meters. Why is this important? Well, because it is used as a model input. The model assumes the simplistic shape of a cone for the whole ice stupa, and to begin the ice formation process, it assumes this cone has an ice radius of around of equal to the spray radius of the fountain, and so it only has to calculate the height of the cone every time step. When the fountain has switched off, uh, it assumes the slope of the cone is constant, and so varies only the height and the radius accordingly. The atmosphere interacts with this ice cone using a 5 millimeter deep surface layer, as shown here. Here is where all the melting and freezing process happen, and the mass balance and energy balance are computed by the model in an hourly time step. Now we see the mass balance input of both the locations. Most of the water came from the fountain discharge, but there was also significant snowfall in the case of the Swiss location. Next, we see the drone measurements made by both the Swiss and the Indian teams. On the top half of the figure, you see the drone measurements made by the Swiss team, which was around 8 in total. The first drone measurement was made when there was no ice and captured the volume of the tree branches surrounding the fountain. In the case of the Indian side, the first drone measurement captured the volume of an old ice reservoir, which was in close proximity of the new ice reservoir and eventually merged with it. And that's why the volume variation starts from the volume of this old ice reservoir. Now we see how the model, just from the weather and water data, was able to calculate the volume variation in an hourly time step. As you see, the model does successfully capture the volume variation and validate with the drone measurements that were made in both the drastically two different sites. So now we see what the mass balance output was like from the model. So you see the biggest fraction of the mass balance output was fountain runoff. This is quite unfortunate because this means that most of the water that came out of the fountain never interacted with the ice surface and simply flowed away. And so, including the vapor losses, this means that the Indian ice reservoir had a total water loss of around 80%, whereas the Swiss ice reservoir had a total water loss of around 78%. Now we see the compared the mean discharge rate and the mean freezing rate computed by the model. So in the case of the Swiss ice reservoir, the mean discharge rate was around 8 liters per minute, but the mean freezing rate was only around 1 liter per minute. In fact, the maximum freezing rate did reach 8 liters per minute, but this was only for around 6 hours out of the 2200 hours possible. In the case of the Indian ice reservoir, the story is actually quite similar. The Indian ice reservoir had a mean discharge rate of 60 liters per minute, but its mean freezing rate was only 14 liters per minute. In fact, the maximum freezing rate only reached 30 liters per minute, and so most of the water that came out of the fountain in the Indian ice reservoir's case was wasted. So, but now we go into understanding why the mean freezing rate in both these locations was so drastically different. To understand that, we focus on the accumulation period of both the locations, basically when the fountain was on, and compare the energy balance and mass balance during this accumulation period. Uh, to do that, we first have to understand how all the energy balance input components contributed were distributed as melting energy and freezing energy. So for the short wave radiation, it basically represents day melt, and so it is part of the melting energy. The long wave radiation basically represents the freezing process, especially during the night, and so it represents the freezing energy. The sensible heat does represent both the melting energy and the freezing energy, but predominantly it contributed to the melting energy through conduction, and so we categorize it as melting energy. The latent heat again predominantly was seen as a process of sublimation, and so it contributed to the freezing energy. Now that we know how to distribute how to associate all the energy balance input as processes and as melting and freezing energy, we go into the magnitude of all these processes. Here you see that the Indian ice reservoir had half the day melt of the Swiss ice reservoir. The freezing, especially during the night, was around 2 times more for the Indian ice reservoir compared to the Swiss. The Indian ice reservoir did have higher conduction melting than the Swiss, but this was compensated by the higher sublimation process in the Indian location compared to that of the Swiss. So, in summary, the day melt and the sublimation process together favored the Indian location over that of the Swiss. Now, to understand why the day melt favored the Indian location, we see the total solar radiation in both these locations. Contrary to expectations, the total solar radiation in the Indian location was actually 2 times higher than that of the Swiss, but the impact of the solar radiation was half than that of the Swiss. Why? Because most of the solar radiation in the Indian case was direct solar radiation, whereas roughly half the total solar radiation in the Swiss case was direct solar radiation and the rest was diffuse. Why is this important? Well, because the direct solar radiation impacts only a fraction of the total surface area. Namely, the horizontal component of the direct solar radiation only sees the triangular cross section of the ice stupa, whereas the vertical component sees a half circle. So, in total, the direct solar radiation was able to impact less than 30% of the surface area, but the diffuse solar radiation impacts the whole of the surface area. So, you can also see this as the effect of the clouds in both the locations. In the Swiss location, half the days were cloudy, and so the diffuse fraction was quite significant compared to the Indian location, and so the diffuse fraction of the solar radiation increased the total impact of the total solar radiation dramatically for the Swiss location. The sublimation process is quite interesting because of the discrepancy in the mass and energy balance of the whole process. Sublimating 1 ton of ice is equivalent in energy to freezing 9 tons of water. So overall, in the Indian ice reservoir, there was sublimation loss or mass loss of 41 tons, but there was freezing energy gain in the order of 21% of the total energy balance. In the case of the Swiss ice reservoir, there was a sublimation mass loss of 5 tons, but there was a freezing energy gain, but this was less than the Indian ice reservoir, around 8% of the total freezing energy balance. So, of course, all these energy balance together happen on the surface of the ice reservoir. So the surface area is quite important, and surface area is directly proportional to the ice radius of the ice stupa. and the ice radius in the accumulation period is the same as the spray radius. So this fountain plays quite an important role. It can be used to reduce the water loss in two ways. First, the water loss could easily be reduced by just reducing the fountain discharge rate, right? We saw that in the Indian ice reservoir, half the fountain discharge was wasted. So maybe just reducing it by half or 30 liters per minute in the Indian ice reservoir could have drastically improved the water loss. In the case of but there's also another interesting way. You could also increase the freezing rate in both the locations by increasing the spray radius, because that increases the surface area in both the locations. So in summary, both the Indian and the Swiss location had high water losses, but water loss reduction is possible by decreasing the discharge rate or increasing the spray radius. The maximum ice volume of the Indian ice reservoir was more than 8 times higher than the Swiss due to lower daymelt and higher sublimation. This technology is ideally suited to serve as a water management strategy, especially in colder and less cloudy regions. Thank you for your attention. I would like to thank all our research partners and implementation partners to make this research possible, and of course, to you for your attention. Thank you and have a nice day.